Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us again for another Tlingit Haida lunchtime chat. Again, I'm Richard Peterson. My Tlingit name is Ish, president of Tlingit Haida. Honored to be here and to share with you all today. Again, we've been continuing to have these lunchtime chats. They've been an opportunity for Tlingit Haida to share broadly with our tribal citizens about our programs and some of our special projects. It's an opportunity to get to know some of the staff and directors and managers. And it's been a really great format for us, I think, to share. As always, feel free to type in your questions. We'll have our chat, and after we finish it up, we can get to your questions. If we run out of time, don't worry. Continue to share your questions, and we'll make sure that we get answers posted up to your questions. And as always, if you like the video, you will be entered in before the end of the lunchtime chat for an opportunity to win a door prize. Today's lunchtime chat is something I'm very passionate about. I'm very excited to be sharing with you all is our, I think I established our Reentry and Recovery department just over a year ago, maybe almost 2 years ago. And that was born out of, we had a grant called Second Chance, and we were helping recently released folks just have some opportunity and assistance to help them get acclimated, get counseling and work towards employment and all those things. When the grant went away, we realized that there was a tremendous need to continue this work. And so we made it a priority of the tribe and to work on reentry, reducing recidivism, helping those with addictions. And so it's our Reentry and Recovery department. I promoted and brought over Talia Ames, who had been working with the Second Chance program, and her passion, as you get to know and hear from her today, is really about working in restorative justice and lifting up our people. And so with her today, we have Natasha, and I hope I get this right, McClanahan? Natasha, we're very happy to have come over and working with us as well and have some great experience she'll share. So I'll go ahead and turn it over and have them introduce themselves. Talia?
Thank you, President Peterson. So my name is Talia Ames, and my Tlingit name is Kayetli. My grandmother's people are Sitka Kagwantan from the Wolf House, and I am the manager of our newest department, the Reentry and Recovery Department.
Hi, my name is Natasha McClanahan, and I am so excited to be here. I'm relatively new to the department, and I have a background. I worked in the governor's office for 4 years and worked on many social justice issues while I was there. I also was legislative liaison for the Department of Corrections under Commissioner Dean Williams, and I've done some other work with the Alaska Network on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. And I'm just really excited to be here and be working with everyone.
Well, thank you, ladies. We're very excited. Feel very fortunate to have you join us both as employees of Tlingit Haida. You're a pretty small and mighty department and team. Can you share your background a little more with us?
Yes, thank you, President Peterson. We are a small team of 4, and I have a wonderful team. I'll tell you about them first. We have a case management specialist. Her name is Tammy Jablonski, and she's a licensed social worker, and she's worked, in assisting those with addictions for many, many years. And then we have our administrative assistant, Rachel Lockie, and she's pretty new to the tribe, but she has just been a game changer in keeping the department running. They say administrative assistants, run the show, and I really think she does. So, and then my background, I am from Southeast Alaska, originally from Mangoon. I left home, and I was in the Air Force for 10 years. And after my third deployment, I thought, I want to go home. So I came back to Southeast and found myself in Juneau, where I was hired to work in the Second Chance Reentry program. And prior to that, I'd gotten my degree in social science, and I focused on criminal justice and sociology. So when I was offered the job at the Second Chance program, it just really fit. I'm blessed enough to use my education in my work, and then to continue my education, I'm pursuing a master's degree in restorative justice. So knowing that we are the original peacemakers and restorative justice practices are really inherent to what we do as Indigenous people, I'm wanting to get that curriculum and work it with our traditional practices, and just create programming that really uses the academic knowledge, but also the inherent knowledge and values we have as tribal people. So I plan to bring that to the department as we grow. Natasha?
Thanks, Talia. Yeah, and I'm really just excited to bring my experience forward. And I am a lifelong Alaskan, and we are all impacted by the work that we do in this department. I think this work is going to improve our communities, and we're all going to be safer for it. And, it's really, I felt like I was coming home when I got this job, because my work in policy at the state level, I'm now getting to come on this side and work on the part that's really fun and really interesting to me, and the part that I know maybe we've missed in the past working at the state. And so it's fun to come over here and see the ways that we can make a better impact.
Great. Sorry, I was muted. Talia, can you share what recidivism is? Because that's, really a crux of what we're focusing on. And I don't know that everybody quite understands what that means.
Sure, thank you. So recidivism refers to somebody going back to prison, somebody relapsing back into criminal behavior, and reoffending. So when we talk about our recidivism rate in the state, we're talking about how many people who have been formerly incarcerated are going back to jail. And reducing recidivism is our goal, and it's all tied to public safety. One of the things about reducing the rate is when people aren't reoffending, they're not committing new crimes, which means there are less victims. So really reducing recidivism is one of the best ways to increase public safety in the community.
I've talked to some people, and some folks have a hard line on this, and I respect that. I've had people think that we're kind of making excuses or excusing away someone's past crimes or what they've done. And really, this is about holding them accountable and helping them engage in the community in a meaningful way where they take that accountability. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think it's a matter of, you talk about compassion and accountability oftentimes, and I've really taken that. And compassionate accountability, I think, is really one of the foundational perspectives of our department, is understanding that people, have had traumas, and they've had reasons for why they've, engaged in criminal behavior in the first place. But it's also important to recognize that, in order to restore things that have gone wrong, we have to be accountable. And so holding our participants accountable, but also recognizing that they might need help to address, some of the foundational reasons they were engaged in criminal behavior, is really, it's important to us. And I know it's important to you. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you, as I said, maybe share with us an overview of the Reentry and Recovery Department?
Sure. as you mentioned, we are the newest department, June 2019, so we're just a year old now. The department is small. We have the 4 of us, as I mentioned. And we have really 2 big focuses. Obviously, they're reentry and recovery, but they're tied together. Recovery is so important for reentry. It's one of the foundational, elements of a successful reentry is sobriety. A lot of our people who have committed crimes and those who've been incarcerated have done so as a result of an addiction. And we do have a lot of drugs and alcohol problems in our communities. And so we are focused on addressing that. Recovery because it affects reentry, but also just recovery standing alone on its own. So we are looking to develop programs in the upcoming year that will focus more on the recovery aspect of the department. We have been focused quite a bit on reentry, but our small team is growing, and we're going to we will be developing some recovery programs, specifically those that take the needs of our villages and their recovery needs and create programs there. But for right now, the Reentry and Recovery Department is focused on housing programs for reentry, and that's our first big program that we're getting set up. So.
Great. I talked about it just a slight little bit, but maybe you can also expand on how the Reentry and Recovery Department was born.
Well, it's, as you said, we had our second chance grant. I believe that was in 2014, and I came on in 2015. And it was a great program. It provided education and training opportunities for those that had been released from incarceration. We met with quite a few people, and over 300 people, and just provided, intensive case management and, employment assistance, helping people write resumes, helping them understand what jobs they could get, what jobs they might be barriered out of. And no matter how many services we provided, it was just really difficult for those services to stick without a healthy place to return to at the end of the night. So we talk about housing, and it's just integral in a successful reentry. So with the department being created, we are just able to dedicate a lot more resources to those things, addressing a lot of the needs that we have, not just as a tribe, but as a community. So we're taking a lot of the things that we did with the Second Chance Reentry program, the things that were successful, and bringing them to our department to kind of use as we develop housing. So we have the housing and reentry coordinator, Natasha. We have a case management specialist, Tammy, and then my administrative assistant, Rachel. And we do plan to grow, but right now that's just our little team, and our focus is housing. And, like I said, that will grow.
Absolutely. I know we've talked about treatment and other things. I know you and I actually visited a treatment center up north that has a cultural base to it, and we want to model something similar. I see this department expanding and growing, but right now, of course, our priority is at housing, which is probably the biggest reason a lot of people reoffend, is they don't have the housing. Natasha, maybe to help set the stage a bit more on that, can you share some recidivism statistics for the state of Alaska?
Yes, thanks, President. They are not great. 75% of all released nonviolent offenders return to incarceration. Our state average, we have seen a little bit of a decrease, actually. This says right there about 63%, but we due to some of the reforms that we've seen in the past few years, it got it to 60. And that's good news, but we have a long ways to go to reducing that recidivism rate, to see less crime, and to get folks back on their feet after they've served their sentence and reintegrated into the community. And housing is going to be a huge, huge factor in that. And, you know, we've even seen where some folks have reoffended just because they're cold and they're hungry and they're on the street. And so having housing is going to just have such a huge impact on those sorts of crimes.
So can you help me understand, why is the recidivism rate so high in Alaska, and why is there such a highly disproportionate number of Alaskan Natives coming in and out of the prison system?
No, it can be kind of complicated, and there's no clear-cut answer for that. Although, you know, we are dealing collectively with a lot of trauma, and, you know, it manifests itself in different ways. And another a reason why there's disproportionate impact is Alaska Natives they come into contact with police a lot more often, especially Alaska Native youth. There's also disparities in income, in housing, and in their access to food and resources as well. Also, another issue can be being removed from your home in the village and then having a pathway home. It's very difficult, it's expensive, and you may not be released back home into the right areas. So yeah, it's very complicated, and having these transitional housing programs are going to help. We will be here and be a resource and hopefully help to get those rates down.
Maybe this seems like a really obvious answer question to this question, but why is reducing recidivism so important?
As I touched on before, President Peterson, it's a matter of public safety. And I think that's a recidivism reduction reason that really anybody can agree with. You know, if we reduce recidivism, there's less crime, there's less victims, and we're overall just safer. But I think it's also important, you know, for me to note that the people that are returning to incarceration are our families. They're people's mothers and brothers and fathers and nephews. And it's, you know, to help somebody that has oftentimes kind of been discarded by society, and, you know, help them, you know, get in touch with their cultural identity, which is their identity, and to be able to just, you know, provide that restoration and the tools to restoration. And it helps everybody. You know, like I said, it's somebody's family. So when you talk about an incarcerated father, you know, that person has children. So reducing recidivism and keeping that person from reoffending means like a whole host of other healthy things are happening. You know, we talked about restoration, but employment, that person's able to provide for their family. They're able to pay restitution, legal fees, child support. And, you know, it costs the city, it costs the state money when we're incarcerating people, so it saves money. But really, you know, for me, it's about humanity. You know, we need to recognize that these are people, and, you know, if we can break a cycle of incarceration, you know, we're just helping so many other, especially children. You know, one of the things that we've talked about with our new housing program is really empowering our formerly incarcerated fathers. So it's, you know, we have to break the cycle, and, you know, reducing recidivism will do that. So,
You know, you mentioned identity, and to me, you know, of course, for us, that's our cultural identity is paramount to who we are. And so many of us, unfortunately, Something I encounter as the president is meeting people. I get emails and correspondence from folks that may not live in Alaska, and they'll say things to me like, I know I'm Tlingit, but I don't know what I am. And I always think back to the late Dr. Sobolov, who I had so many opportunities to hear speak. And he would often say, when we know who we are, we don't hurt ourselves. And for me, that really resounds and kind of echoes in my brain, that it's that reestablishing that link for those that were broken to our cultural identity. And I know that's a basis of what we're trying to build this from. And I just think that's such a powerful thing to think about. When we know who we are, we don't hurt ourselves. And, you know, and by extension, when we hurt ourselves, we are often hurting others. So I think that's something to really think about. You know, Talia, last year and earlier this year, you coordinated 2 reentry simulations. Can you explain what a reentry simulation is, and can you walk us through a simulation briefly?
Sure, thank you. So we coordinated the reentry simulations with our partners over at the Juneau Reentry Coalition. They were very successful. You can see on the slide there, that was a picture. And what the reentry simulation is, it's a hands-on educational event that, you know, helps people understand the challenges that someone faces when they come out of incarceration. And the setup is there are, you know, about 15 stations in the room, and each station is a table, and it represents something that would be in need for a returning citizen. And returning citizen is the language I like to use to refer to somebody that was formerly incarcerated and is reentering. So, so the needs that they have, and that's, you know, transportation, housing, food. There are so many things that a person needs in order to reenter successfully, and they are often not accessible. You know, having to have a bus ticket, for example, or a bus pass to ride the bus to go get a job, to have the money to buy things like bus passes. So, you know, when people are released from incarceration, often it's with the clothes on their back, and that's it. They don't have identification. So a lot of those things are addressed in the reentry simulation, and we kind of, you know, the participants walk through and have to get all of these things in a certain timeline, or they go back to jail. And it's just, it was a really fun event. Both of them were very, they were fun, but also very sobering to think that all of those barriers are faced by people coming out. And we've gotten so much great feedback on them about how it's eye-opening, and it makes people think about things that they wouldn't have otherwise thought. You know, people think reentry is an easy process, and I don't know how many times I've heard, well, you know, why don't they just get a job? Or why don't they just, you know, why don't they just do this? And incarceration is unfortunately the gift that just keeps on giving. Incarceration is supposed to be the punishment, and that punishment is the absence of freedom, right? So somebody commits a crime, they're incarcerated, that's the punishment. But what happens instead is they're released, and there are all these things now that are difficult for them to do. There are jobs they can't get, there's housing they can't get. And, you know, just the stigma of being formerly incarcerated can create barriers in really simple things, like even just seeing your family, or, you know, people you went to school with, your friends might not treat you the same. So there's just so much that we don't think about. And when you go through the reentry simulation, you really get to understand that on a greater level. But of course, there are things that we can't simulate that are often parts of incarceration, or, you know, attributed to the difficulties of reentering, like mental illness and addiction. those are things that you can't simulate. So there are just layers on layers, and the simulation takes the more tangible things and we simulate those. But I always like to remind people that there are hidden disabilities that a lot of people carry that we won't ever be able to replicate. So.
Yeah, I've gotten the opportunity to speak at these and to witness some of it. And, I love this picture because if you notice, one of the ladies in there is one of our elected representatives here in Juneau. Not Sarah, but another I had talked to who was there came up to me after at another event and had gone through the simulation. And, I think their view was a little different going in than it was coming out of the simulation. And that's what we're hoping for, right? But, a lot of us share that, hey, you did the time, you did the crime, you do the time. And that's true. Again, we're about accountability. But, when people say, oh, why couldn't they just get a job or, all this, there are so many barriers stacked up that programs like this are so needed, not to make excuses or whatever. We're helping them face these things head on with accountability, working to transition back into society in a productive way. And that's what the whole judicial and penal system are supposed to be about, is people do their time and then they come into society being productive, and that's just not a reality. And so we're trying to work to remove those barriers so that they can put in the work, the hard work it takes to recover and to rebuild yourself, so I that's why I'm so passionate about it myself, is I want to see a healthy community, and that takes people becoming healthy, putting in that work to be healthy. So anyhow, Natasha, can you share why housing is such a large portion of addressing recidivism?
Yeah, absolutely. And to have these healthy communities we're going for, people have to have somewhere safe to lay their head at night. And earlier I had mentioned, we have evidence in our state of folks that are cold and on the streets and they go commit a petty crime so that they can be incarcerated. And this is a key reason why housing is important. When you're safe and you're at home and you have structure, you're able to get that job, to maintain it, to pay your restitution, to help your children. All of those things they're pivotal. Once you have housing, you're not able to get a job if you have nowhere to take a shower to get ready for your interview. It's all of these little things that are combined, and housing is one of the foundations.
So the department has been very busy working on housing. Can you tell us about the Alloway Avenue project?
Absolutely. Right now we're working with the city on a conditional use permit. You can see a rendering here on the screen, and this is just going to be such an amazing opportunity. We received funding from the BJA to develop this program. There will be housing for 16 individuals that are returning citizens, and there will be a resident manager on site as well. And there will be opportunities for programming. Our case manager, who Talia has mentioned, will be there on site to work with individuals every day. It's just really an exciting opportunity.
So, Talia, can you share with me the difference between what we're doing with this transitional housing and I think what people know as halfway houses?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. There is a question that's a very common question that we're getting, actually, and there is a tendency to refer to our type of program as a halfway house, but for the definition, the city definition, for clarity, a halfway house is a single family dwelling for not more than 9 persons over the age of 12, together with not more than 2 persons providing supervision and other services to such persons, all of whom live together as a single housekeeping unit. Residents may be serving a sentence for a criminal act. Uses with 10 or more residents shall be regulated as institutional correction facilities. So what that means is in a halfway house, the person is still serving their sentence under 24-hour supervision. It would be the same as if they were in a prison. It's just a different location. Transitional housing means a residential use for people released from a correctional facility or similar facility. Residents may be on probation or parole. Although approval by the Department of Corrections may be necessary for a resident to reside in transitional housing, unlike a correctional facility, a resident is not ordered to live in transitional housing. An owner or manager must live on site. So I think that's really the biggest distinction, is that people choose to live in our housing. They will choose, we will choose them, they will choose us. There is no DOC involvement other than approving the housing in which their probationer or parolee is living. But we are going to go a step beyond that and just make sure that our residents have a referral from the Department of Corrections. I think it's important to recognize that the people who work in the prison will know these people best. And we want to make sure that we are getting people that are really wanting to change things around and to have employment and to have a recovery program and have all of the things that help with a successful reentry. So again, with the difference being people are ordered to live at halfway houses, and it's a lot more of a punitive environment. The transitional housing, we are just doing that exact thing, trying to transition people to be independent and self-sufficient. Self-sufficiency is, part of our mission as a tribe. And if we can help this population be self-sufficient, it's going to just be a game changer. So we're really looking at the transitional housing of a peer-supported program. We're looking at creating a more family environment. We want our residents to be accountable, not just to the community, but to each other. So we'll be fostering that kind of relationship between residents with house meals, house chores. They'll be paying rent. We want them to have agency in their housing choice. So we want them to have pride in the home, and knowing that when those habits are built, they will carry on to whatever permanent housing the person ends up having. We want them to know how to manage their own household, and it's just really exciting. We are really focused on making that transition a healthy one.
Yeah, I think when I hear it, what I hear is transitional housing is a choice. And it's a choice to be doing that self-improvement. It's a choice to be working towards, the rehabilitation and restoring themselves. And I think, it's just like when you go to rehab, if you're court ordered, more oftentimes than not, it's not successful until you want that healing, till you want to recover. Not that anybody wants to be an addict, but, there's a big difference between wanting and being told. So anyways, I like that. Natasha, can you go over what some of the eligibility requirements are for citizens to participate in the transitional housing program?
Yes, absolutely. And, like Talia was mentioning, they will be working with their institutional probation officer. They'll be demonstrating, I think it's important to note, they'll be demonstrating good behavior as well. They can't have any major infractions in the past 6 months. And they're going to write an essay. They're going to show, like you were saying, President Peterson, that they're ready to change. They want to commit, and they're ready to come and join this family environment and this supportive environment and be part of it. It's important to note also that for Alloway, those with sex offenses will not be eligible. And this is going to be a place where culture is infused, where families can start working on reunification and really start working towards, getting a job and getting on their feet and transitioning out of the housing, hopefully within 2 years.
So to both of you, for the residents of this transitional housing program, what are some of the other programs and services that'll be available to them?
I guess I can answer that. So, we have a lot of different departments and services within the tribe. So we've got, our employment and training department. We can, of course, set them up with that. We have a lot of great programs through TFYS. There are some really popular programs like there's a drumming group, there's a arts and crafts night. So I would expect if our residents were interested in those things that they could attend. We also plan on hosting an in-house Fatherhood is Sacred service or class specifically for our residents. It's anticipated a lot of our residents will be fathers. And so, like I said, that's really important to us that we work on that reunification piece. So, besides our in-house services, we are going to be working with our community partners and addressing whatever needs they may have, whether it be counseling or, any kind of behavioral health or, we have friends over at the Department of Labor for job assistance. And we are going to do a lot of that in-house, but it's important to recognize that we have an amazing service community in Juneau. And there are some great programs out there that we're going to put our residents in touch with to make sure that they're getting the best services they can. And, while I say that, we will also be working on developing more programs within the department as things grow. One of the things that I'm really excited about is an employment sponsorship program where we'll be working with business owners who hire our residents and how we will help them identify soft skills that the residents might need, and we'll address them in the home. So we'll have a weekly group talking about, timeliness or the right language to use in a work environment, or even things like hygiene. So that's the employment sponsorship program that's in development. In addition, we are taking a lot of our cues from the Delancey Street Foundation model, which is a very successful reentry program in California that has been around for like 30 years, and they have a really great low recidivism rate. And what they do is they provide all-inclusive housing, and in that housing you're having, of course, your meals and a place to sleep, but also all the programming and employment. The jobs that the residents work in are actually the jobs provided by the Delancey Street Foundation program, and any profits from those jobs go right back into the program. So there's a training opportunity there as the residents work in different fields, and then they're also, supporting the program, making it sustainable. So we're looking at doing something really similar. We have a couple of business plans that we're working towards once we get our houses started. It's kind of a phase 2 thing, but we're going to be creating some job opportunities in-house. We've talked about a coffee shop. We've got a great coffee shop at the Tribe with Sacred Grounds, and we can, put put some time and energy into creating a similar model for our returning citizens. Landscaping is another one we've talked about, and things that are agricultural based, because gardening is just really therapeutic. And if we can do a community garden and use some of that for employment, but also as a way to give back, we can, that's one of an element of one of our jobs that we're creating, one of our businesses. So anyways, lots of ideas, lots of services. I think, like you said, we're just going to grow. So
we touched on this a little bit already, but why is the cultural programming such an important aspect of this transitional housing program?
So, I really enjoyed the quote that you shared earlier. When you know yourself, you don't hurt yourself. And, I can personally attest to that. The more I get involved with my culture, the better I feel. When I'm outside, when I'm fishing, and when I'm on the water, I'm just a better person all the way around. You want to run into me after I've been fishing, I'm just glowing. And we want to bring that and infuse that. And we're creating a family feel. And we have a restorative system based on balance. And this is going to help with all of the things we've been talking about, where you're going to pay your restoration, you're going to reunify with your family, and culture is going to help lift that up. And, there will be singing, dancing, drumming, moccasin making, it's going to be a really, really healing and a great space for it.
So right now we've applied for a conditional use permit for the Alloway Avenue Transitional Housing Project. Can you talk about this application process and how people can provide comments if they'd like to support our project?
Natasha, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can write in to pc_comments@juno.org. Make sure it's PC_comments. We had some issues where people were missing that S. So S is very important to get it over to the community. And we are hoping to have them in by noon tomorrow so that they can get before the commissioners so they have time to read it in their packet. Now, if you miss that deadline, please feel free to also write in. Because the commissioners will get it the day of. And the meeting is August 11th. And I believe we have information for that on the next slide. Yep, Tuesday at 7 p.m. And we would love to have verbal testimony. If you can call in and you can listen in and you can hear a lot more about the projects. You can see some of the designs and it's just really an awesome project. I'm so excited about it. And the Zoom link and the information is there, but also feel free to reach out to us and we can walk you through it.
So in our past lunchtime chats, we've had our folks from Tribal Court present and, they're doing some pretty great things. How will our department here work with the Tribal Court?
Thank you, President Peterson. Well, when we created the department, it was important that we were aligned with what the tribal court is doing. So I think, as our programs grow, we're just making sure that we are growing in a way that can accommodate any work that's being done at the tribal court, because it's so important, to identify that these departments have a lot in common. There are a lot of programs over at Tribal Court, like there's a diversion program coming up that really complements what we're doing, and vice versa. I think, when you talk about diversion and reentry, I see them as two sides of the same coin. So when you're looking at a diversion program, you want to provide the support and resources and, everything that would be needed to help someone who's been incarcerated. And when you're looking at diversion, it's the same thing. The person was in a bad place to have gotten to the point where they've committed a crime. So those resources are still needed. It's just a matter of, acting before charges are filed. So we talked about some of the cultural programming things that we'll be doing. I know that is something that tribal courts really focused on as well, is building these cultural foundations in their programs to help those that have been impacted by the justice system. So I think that is definitely a place where we can work together. Another one is victims of crime. The tribal court is developing programs about that, and I foresee us working on that together, because as part of restoration, it's important that we acknowledge people have been hurt when a crime occurs. And so, how can we help those that have been impacted by crime? I think it's important that there is accountability from our participants to acknowledge not only, maybe there was property damage or things along those lines, but also, how people can feel unsafe when they've been a victim of crime. It can change your perspective on a lot of things. I think sometimes we see people who are not very supportive of reentry programs that have been victims of crime. I completely understand. It changes your perspective. So, addressing the wrongdoings, and I think that will be it's going to be a cornerstone of our program, and also a way we can work with tribal court. There's just a lot. I'm as the lunchtime chat with tribal court covered, there's so much going on over there. So we definitely want to grow with them, and we'll see if we can keep up.
Great. Can you share about who some of the community partners that you work with are and why collaboration is so important?
Sure, I'll take that question. Thank you. So it's been very awesome to get the letters of support that we've received to this point for our housing program. And that has been from our community partners, such as the Glory Hall, St. Vincent's, Aware, Jammy, Search. There are, all of our social services providers and medical community, as I mentioned earlier, recognize the importance of housing and how foundational it is for success. So, working their support for these projects is because they recognize we're going to help each other. They can provide some services that we might not have, and we can provide housing for people that they serve. So it's so important that we recognize there are some awesome programs and partners in the community that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can be stronger together. We are stronger together. So that collaboration is really what has allowed us to get where we are so far. We are a small department, but we've just received an incredible amount of support because we've worked really well with our community partners in the past. And I think there's a lot of excitement about what we're doing. And it's really, we're really being shown that. And, they're another group that we will work with as we grow.
Great. Tlingit Haida is one of the 8 tribes in the United States selected to participate in the Bureau of Indian Affairs Office of Justice Services Indian Country Recidivism Reduction Initiative. Can you talk about this partnership?
Absolutely. So the Recidivism Reduction Initiative, or RRI, it's about 5 years old, and what it is a program that uses a very unique data collection system and risk assessment tool that is specific for Indian country. And, you know, when you do a typical risk assessment, there are never questions about culture. But an example, the risk assessment that we'll be using, it's a validated tool. It's called the GAINS short screener. But this tool asks, you know, about cultural connection. And, you know, there is not a lot of published data out there about the importance in culture in reentry, but we know that, you know, we know inherently how important our culture is and how that identity helps us. So the RRI gives us the tools to collect data that takes those elements into account. And what we're doing is building information to use for the future, specifically about Indian country. Down in the lower 48, you know, there are reservations and they have jurisdiction in those reservations. So we don't collect a lot of data that's needed to prove that these programs work, to get future funding, to just really target our programs to our people. Being a part of this initiative is going to allow all the tribes involved access to a wealth of information about what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, and, you know, how we can just do better to serve our Indigenous people all over the United States.
This is awesome. Along this line, can you talk about some of the accomplishments of the Reentry and Recovery Department from last year?
Absolutely. We had a really exciting year last year. We received a very generous donation of 5 sleeper trailers from Core, Alaska. They were from the Kensington mine. They also donated $20,000 with that donation of housing. And that's actually, we're going to be building those trailers out in the future as well to provide reentry housing. So that was a really good start for a housing foundation. We also received a donation from the Northern Light United Church of $15,000 to collaborate with an architect firm, the Northwind Architects, to work on building those and on designing those trailers. To kind of pull everything together, we got a $750,000 grant that would support all of these housing programs. So everything just kind of really came together. We're really blessed to have these great things happen. And that CTAS grant is what is going to afford us to do the transitional housing and pay for the direct services and the cultural programming. I mean, we asked for money to buy fishing permits. I mean, that's how detailed this is. We're going to be able to compensate our elders that we'll be bringing in to teach our residents in different areas of cultural knowledge. And, you know, we'll be doing carving, art, etc. It's going to be great.
That's awesome. Kind of following and building off of that from our accomplishments last year, what are some of the goals you have for this year?
So we talked briefly about the reentry simulation. So we've already done that for this year. So that's a goal ticked off the list. And then we have the funding and property for the build out of the trailers. So we've secured that funding as well. So I'm not sure that we'll be able to provide the direct services to our residents just yet this year. But if that goal isn't met this year, it will be very, very early in 2021. We're really eager to get our housing open so we can start providing those services. And then one of the bigger focuses for me is expanding on the recovery side of the department, as I touched on before, and creating a tribal action plan that would take the needs of all of our communities, all of our rural communities. You know, we're talking about our villages like Angoon and Kasan and Huna and Klawak, all of these places, and reaching out to them and finding out what their needs are when it comes to recovery. What are your resources? What's your priority concern? you know, basically, how can we help you create a response to addiction in your own community? So that tribal action plan is going to take those pieces, put it together into one comprehensive plan for the tribe and how we address substance misuse in our communities and in the tribe overall. So getting that tribal action plan created is a really important next step for us.
Awesome. Well, that really concludes our conversation. So I'd like to turn and hear from questions for our panelists from those tuned in.
Thank you, everyone. Our first question is, I might mess up the pronunciation, from Shul Nick. Are there reports available about the first phase of the program, the reentry program?
So are we referring to the Second Chance program that we did prior? If it's the Second Chance program, yes, we have information about that, and about the housing we do as well. I'm not sure, but if you know, we can get in touch with that person for clarification, I'll get that information to them.
Excellent. Our next question is from Sarah Gregory. Is there help for a family that has a criminal history to get into housing? They didn't just get out, but are trying to find housing for their family now that they have reunited. Family has 3 children and need a bigger place to live and only has 1 bedroom.
So we don't have reentry housing for families at this time. It's not something that we're developing just yet, but I see potential for that kind of response in the future. For now, I would suggest maybe working with one of our other resources at the tribe. Perhaps TANF might be a good start, or you know, perhaps somebody in TFYS. But reentry housing for families is not something we're doing just yet, but there is a need. I will agree.
All right. Our next question from Donna Jackson. President Obama was working on a bill where rehabilitation included not using background checks to exclude them from unemployment. And any idea if this is still in the works?
Natasha, you're a policy expert. Do you know anything about that? I am absolutely for the Ban the Box initiative, but I'm not sure where it stands.
Yeah, so Ban the Box is not implemented on a national level at this time. I think it's each state individually, and I can follow up with more information on where exactly the country's at and where we're at here in Alaska. But to my knowledge, you know, it's just up to individual companies to set their policy.
And I would love if we address that as a state. It is a very big barrier.
Our next question is from Paula Peterson. Would it be helpful to have support from the tribes, as some of the incarcerated are from our villages?
I would say absolutely. And that's what Talia kind of got to, the goal of 2020, is we want to start building those relationships with our village tribes, because we realize that we can't operate in a bubble here. And part of the deal is some folks want to be able to return to their villages, but they have barriers to that with their probation. And so we need to work with the communities to, you know, if we want them to successfully, you know, re-enter their community, I think it's going to take that involvement.
Absolutely. And to piggyback on that, we're establishing the housing here in Juneau, but I think it's important to note that a lot of our residents will be from the villages. They're incarcerated in Juneau because we have a prison here, or, you know, if they're incarcerated elsewhere in the state, you know, we're going to be working very hard with corrections to get them here to our housing and getting them released in Juneau. If we can't get somebody all the way home to the village right away, I think that, you know, landing here in Juneau with the cultural support and services is the next best step. That way we can kind of work on restoring those ties within their village as well before they're released on their own out of transitional housing. So.
Awesome. Our next question is from Sandra Demert, 2 parts. What is the length of time a person can stay at the transitional housing, and would it be for men, women, or both?
Natasha?
Yeah, the length of stay is 2 years. Although we would be willing to, if someone is doing really well and there's certain circumstances that arise, we could review it on a case-by-case basis if they need an extension. But again, the goal is self-sufficiency and getting folks on their own. So that's the 2-year time limit. And then what was the next question? Is it just for men? So Alloway Avenue will be just housing for men at this time, yes.
And we are working on more housing programs. It's just, we're not quite there yet, but we will be providing housing for all populations. That's the vision. We want to make sure that we're supporting all of our tribal citizens in need, and not being too inclusive or exclusive, excuse me. And then with the length of time, we also have a minimum stay of 6 months because we want people to commit to change, and we feel that 6 months is a better foundation than just being there for a month or 2. So 6 months to 2 years, and then a case-by-case basis.
Excellent. Our next question, a little lengthy. 1 in 5 of us are locked up or under supervision, a very high percentage. Why is it that they only offer entry-level help into the workforce and no mention of education at the university level? And then the second part was, it seems as if we're being talked about as second-class citizens in our territory by our own people. It's all in the wording. And do the people who run these programs have a knowledge of their culture, or is this a Western-run project with Native intent?
So maybe we'll multi-tackle this question. I think it's a great question. You know, we're only at an entry level because this is, as we started off at the beginning of this presentation, is a new program, and you know we're building a foundation. And Talia just said that in her last response. You know, right now it's a little exclusive, and we want to be more inclusive. We have long-term plans to get there so that we're serving different folks. Right now, this is us getting our feet wet. This is not a Western-based program. We're absolutely, we've put in, and there will be positions for cultural bearers, elders that we will pay them. They will come in, they will work with and teach classes. They'll share. It's going to be pretty phenomenally culturally based, I believe. If we're giving off the appearance that it's Western based, it's not. Certainly if we're talking about these folks as if they're second class citizens, that's the exact opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to take them from being treated as second class citizens and help them, give them the hand up, not the hand out, to you know, reestablish themselves and rebuild themselves, so that not only do others view them in a better light, but that they view themselves in a better light, and that they can shake off some of the stigma and titles that other people have put on them. So yeah, the people who will be running the programs are going to have very strong cultural bases. We've already had, one of the things that's been phenomenal is we've already had some of these culture bearers reach out to us wanting to be involved, wanting to teach classes. I think it's going to be tremendously successful. Are we working, as we get these folks into our program and we talk about their basic education needs, then we'll be able to identify and turn to other programs that can help them get into the university, you know, alumni scholarships, all these other things. So yeah, this is not basic. It's, you know, that's why it has up to 2 years, so we can really delve in with these folks and work with them and help them decide for themselves what their success looks like. We're not telling them, they're telling us how, when they're successful. I think I covered all of that.
Absolutely. That was I couldn't have said it better myself, President Peterson. I think you touched on everything. And, you know, it's like you said, this is a jumping off point. We have to start somewhere. We can't just not do something because it's not big enough. We'll grow there. We'll grow that way organically. This is going to be a dynamic program. We really want our residents involved in the way we do things. It's their home. We talk about peer accountability. It's something you'll hear me saying a lot in the next couple years. And as far as the Western-based program, I would say that we're, you know, quite the opposite. If you tune into our Planning Commission meeting next Tuesday, you can see the full presentation on this program. And one of the very clear elements is not only are we designing the building with some aesthetic elements of our tribe, but we're talking about longhouses, or people traditionally lived communally. You know, you have 100 people living in a house. There is accountability to each other. People have to work together to be successful, to have that that environment. And so we have taken a lot of that and just put it into our home. We want to replicate the way of our ancestors working together for success, and that's what we're building in our homes. So that's a great question, and I will say, you know, if I'm going the wrong way, let me know. If there's something that we can do better, if there's a way for us to better respect our traditional values, we're all about it.
Awesome. Our next question is from Barbara Erickson. I'm sorry, Kinsey Martin. How long is the residency in the transition housing? Does each participant, with the help of a social worker, make a short-term and long-term plan to graduate? And how do you determine their readiness to graduate?
So I wouldn't really refer to it as a graduation. You know, we are really a people-centered program. So everybody's transition is going to look different. And we do have a dedicated case manager who has a lot of experience, and she'll be working with them individually to determine what their goals are. So absolutely, they'll probably have several short-term goals. I think the long-term goal is ultimately going to be self-sufficiency and finding a permanent, safe housing, sober housing, finding an environment in which to continue the progress that they'll have made at the home. So I would say readiness to graduate is all about, it's going to be defined by the person and determined by the case manager if they're ready. And before somebody leaves, we are going to make sure that they're transitioning into a good situation, because that's the point, is to provide them this safe, sober space to get the things that they need together to be successful on their own. And, you know, that said, on their own is only so far. We will always be there for them. We will likely have like an alum group. You know, we're hoping that we're building relationships for life, that these, the people working together as a peer cohort, I hope that they will maintain their relationships after they move out and just keep each other going and reminding them that they've done a hard thing and, you know, to keep on going. So I'm excited about the opportunities there as well.
Great. Our last question is from Jesse Wright. He asks, why is there no help or anything for those who have a sex offender charge?
I can answer that. So as we said, this is our first project. We already have plans for other projects that will address those things. You know, but we have to fall within regulations, federal regulations on barriers. And so we can't, and not only that, this project, you know, probably already in the neighborhood, we want to be careful where we place and put certain categories of offenses. And so we will be taking on sex offenders, just not in this facility. We'll have another facility, and it will be not located in a residential area or near a residential area. So, you know, we have to be careful of those things, but it is in the works, as is programs for women. We really, while this may look exclusive, as Talia said, we really are trying to be inclusive. It's just, you know, this is a brand new department. This is our first big project. And, you know, we're going to be building, and I hope this is going to be a large department within our tribe, where we're really offering a one-stop shop for all of our folks that need this kind of hand up.
Thank you, President Peterson. I hope the department doesn't have a need eventually. I want it to grow. I know what you're saying, but wouldn't it be great if I was worked out of a job?
I mean, that's the ultimate goal with most of the programs that we do is, you know, the ultimate goal would be to work ourselves out of this kind of work. That's probably not in the near future. I think that we're going to be a part of the solution for the long term of that, though. I really, truly do. That really, we are over time by a bit, and I just want to thank again our panelists. I want to thank all those who have tuned in. If we did not get to your question live, and I know there were quite a few more, no worries. We'll provide those answers in the comments and make sure that your question is answered. And again, if you have ideas or questions beyond that, contact information was attached. Just, you know, or you can message our communications through our Facebook page, and they'll get the question to the right person. Again, just really excited about this. This week's winners for our door prize: Lindsay Demert Gray won a T&H duffel bag with sleeping bag and pad, and Trixie Calkins Bennett won a David Boxley Formline t-shirt. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. We want to thank all of our sponsors who keep us here, which we just blew past them. Thank you. Smokehouse Catering, Sacred Shine, Elizabeth Pradovich Hall, Sacred Grounds, and our Navigators program. Be sure to join us next week. We're going to be covering our youth service programs. And so we look forward to sharing about what we're endeavoring to do for our youth. Thank you all, and be well.
Finish, Tish.